Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a reading vlog. I recently watched my quarterly TBR video and I realised that it is the 3rd of September and I haven't really started a bunch of the books that I wanted to read this month. I also did mention that The Burning Light by Brent Weeks is one that I really wanted to read this month, but I believe that comes out on the 22nd of October, so at least for that chunky fantasy I don't have to read it this month as well. But also Contemporary-a-thon is happening at the end of September on the 23rd to the 29th and I have filmed my TBR for that, so I do have a separate bunch of books to read that week. So I technically only have a couple of weeks to read the big chunky books that are on my TBR, and my reading has been a lot slower this year, so that might be a bit of a challenge for me. First up, I have a young adult fantasy to read, and that is Monuments by Will Kostakis, and I was lucky enough to meet Will at Melbourne Writers Festival and he signed this one for me. I don't know too much about this other than the fact that the main character is Greek and the fantasy element doesn't necessarily deal with Greek mythology, but it deals with a fantasy element to it. So that's really all I know about it. I hope it's going to be a fairly quick read because I'd like to knock this over in a couple of days. Next up, I have two books that keep appearing in my TBR videos and I just haven't really prioritised them, and they are Eon and Iona by Alison Goodman. I don't know what it is about the series that makes me keep avoiding it. I know it's about fantasy, I know it potentially involves dragons and elemental magic, so these are all things that sound way up my alley, so I don't have a reason for putting them off really. Other than the fact that this is two books rather than one, so I think that might be the thing that's intimidating me a little bit because I know that I'm going to have to read two books when I start these, but that doesn't really make sense when I have the first of a couple of series in this video as well. So hopefully I can maybe make some headway in this, or at least try the first chapter and see if I actually will enjoy them. Next, I have a young adult book by an author that I've really been enjoying, and it is Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. I've recently read his adult trilogy, The First Law, and I really enjoyed those. They were very dark and very nuanced and all the characters were fairly morally grey, and I really enjoyed that about them. So I'm hoping that his young adult series has a bit of that element in it as well. I don't know anything about this book. I received it as a Kris Kringle present many years ago and I just have not picked it up because it's just blended into my shelves and made a home there, and I need to actually read this one, which is going to be the common thread through the rest of these books. A book that I've also got on this TBR is Unwind by Neil Shusterman. I don't have the physical copy here because it's at my house, but that again is the start of a 4-book series, so I think that's why I've kind of been putting it off. But I just also haven't been in the mood to read dystopian very much, so I think I need to just branch out and pick it up at last because this has been on many of my TBR videos and it's just time to pick it up and read it. And then second to last, I have The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan, and this is a new book that he's written. It is not part of his Blood Song series, which I unfortunately DNF'd earlier this year. I loved the first book, but I just didn't enjoy the way it continued, unfortunately. So I'm hoping this other series by him actually hooks me and I stick around and read the rest of them, because I have this book and then I've got the second book. So it would be nice if I liked this series because I've already got the next book in the series. The tagline for this one is Ignite the Fires of War, and I know it deals with drakes, which are a form of dragon in this series, and potentially drake hunters as well. So I'm not sure who the main character is, but I'm really excited to find out. And then the last book in this TBR I've actually already started, and it's Dark Age by Pierce Brown. This is a book that I'm reading on audiobook and I'm about halfway through it, but I haven't had a regular work commute to go to and from to listen to an audiobook on, so that's why I'm dragging my feet a little bit with this one. And I've spoken about it before, but this was a fairly slow start with a lot of politics and a lot of language and characters that I wasn't really familiar with, so it took a while to really get into it, but I'm a little bit more interested now that I'm halfway through, so hopefully it just maintains a pace that's interesting to me, because it has the potential to go off on political tangents and that's not really what I'm here for. I want to care about these characters and I want to be interested in this story, so I'm going to finish it, but at the moment my rating for it is probably about a 3.5 stars rather than a 4, and that's just based on the enjoyment factor of it and not the written quality of it, because the quality of writing is at least a 4 and 5 stars, but my enjoyment factor is definitely below that, so let's just hope I get through this one. So that's it for my TBR. I don't know how long this vlog is going to go for, but I want to finish as many books as possible, so stick around and see what I manage to finish. Hi, it's September 5th at 10 o'clock in the morning and I have finished a book, which is why I'm sitting down to update you. So I ended up finishing Monuments by Will Kostakis and I gave this about a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was a fun fantasy read. It was more like an urban fantasy rather than straight up fantasy because it was still set in our world. This one was set in Sydney and it had fantastical elements incorporated into it. And this is the first of a series and this book came out this year, so there will be more installments in the future. I think there's a garbage truck outside and there's probably noise in the house, so if you hear background noise, just please forgive me, but I don't have any other time to film because I need to get some study in today. Yeah, I liked this one, but I didn't love it, so I didn't end up giving it a 4 out of 5, but I would recommend it if you like a fun urban fantasy read, because that's what this was. So it wasn't a bad book, I just didn't love it. That's pretty much all I have to say about it, really. And because I finished that book, I get to start the next book on my TBR pile of shame, which I have thus dubbed it, and that is Unwind by Neil Shusterman. Yes, I'm finally starting this one. At last, it is way overdue, and like I said in my first clip, I have already read the first chapter of this, so starting this will be a little bit of a boost for me because I've already read a little bit of it before, which is nice. So that definitely encourages me to pick it up, and I can't wait to finish this one as well. After this one, I'm not sure what I'll pick up next, but I'm just going to see how I go with reading it first and then make that decision later, because I'm trying to kind of ignore the fantasy books that are on my TBR that are quite thick and just focus on the YA for now. Additionally, I'm also listening to Dark Age by Pierce Brown, and I didn't actually mention that at the end of my Newts vlog, but I'm still listening to it. I'm about 60-ish% through it, so I'm getting a little bit more headway because I've been going in and out of the city for Melbourne Writers Festival, so I've been listening to it on the train while I'm going in and out of the city. I am liking it, but I'm not, like I said, loving it. There was not a plot twist, but like a little mini revelation in a part that I just read, and I really enjoyed that. That gave me a little bit of the spark of what I felt with the first trilogy, but I think I need to stop comparing it to the first trilogy because I love that trilogy a lot, and the more recent installments have a very different vibe and a very different feel, and obviously Pierce Brown's writing has grown since, and so he's writing them a little bit differently as well with more politics. So let's just hope that I give Dark Age a 4, because at the moment it's sitting on a solid 3.5 just based on my enjoyment factor. So hopefully that rating goes up, but I will keep you updated. Hello, it's September 6th now and it's about 10 o'clock. And yesterday I actually started Unwind, but unfortunately I got 46 pages into this one and then I decided to DNF it. I really wanted to like this, but because of the way that it was written, I couldn't really connect with the writing style. It seemed very choppy to me. And it does have a really cool dystopian YA premise with a bunch of different kids, 3 different kids from 3 very different backgrounds. One is very religiously brought up and he believes that he's making a sacrifice when his family sent him off to go and be unwound. Another is just a regular boy named Connor, and he and his girlfriend were going to run away together, but she has rejected him and now he's on his own. And then there's another girl starting with R, I've forgotten her name, and she is an orphan and she's been brought up and educated so she can kind of defend herself, and she's a bit of a tough girl. So it's these 3 escaping together, and then I think it's probably going to be them trying to survive together. I stopped reading at page 46 when they kind of all met for the first time because I just couldn't get on board with the writing style. It has very short sentences, it's very choppy, and I think because of the way it's told in the type of third person that it's told, I'm struggling to connect with the characters a little bit. So I am just really glad that I gave this one a red hot go, to be honest. I thought I'd like it more. I think I predicted in my try chapter tag that this would be a 3.5 stars, and it would probably be about a 3 stars if I continued reading it, but I don't really want to commit to this and commit to a 4-book series when I'm not loving the first book. So I am actually going to probably unhaul these ones, and that means that I've got about 77 books on my TBR, so I finally made it under the number 80. Sorry if my nose is a bit snuffly, my voice sounds different. I am getting a cold, I think. It's been going around and I've been in and out of the city for Melbourne Writers Festival, so it was inevitable really, but I was trying to avoid it, but it's caught me, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. And then last night I started Half a King by Joe Abercrombie, and I am 7 pages into this and I already love it, so I can't wait to read the rest of the series. I'm really glad that I have this whole trilogy on my shelf so that I can continue reading if this ends in a huge cliffhanger. I really like the first law series by the same author, and this is his young adult series. It's really not related at all. This follows a boy named Yavi, and he's actually a prince and he's studying to become a priest, but in the first couple of pages he realizes that that probably won't happen for him and he's forced into being king, and I won't say why. But just the way that it was set up in the first like 7 pages, it already had me laughing and it already had me hooked with the suspense of it. So I'm going to anticipate that this will be at least a 4 stars, if not a 5-star read for me. And I'm just really excited to have picked this up finally because it's been on my TBR for an age now. I am going into Melbourne Writers Festival today, so I'll probably get some reading done of this one in between the 2 sessions I have. And I've also got Dark Age by Pierce Brown as well It's there on the shelf behind me, but I'm not reading the physical book. I'm listening to the audiobook, so I'm 60-ish% through that. I've got 13 hours left of the audiobook to go, so hopefully I can get close to finishing that one as well, because that's the whole point of this reading vlog. And Dark Age is one of those ones that has just lingered on my TBR for way too long because I've taken too long to read it. As for what I'm probably going to pick up next, I was thinking of picking up The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan, but it depends on what mood I'm in. I didn't bring the sequel to Half a King with me, and I'm not at home at the moment, so I don't think I can continue the series if I end up loving book one immediately. So I'll probably end up picking up Iona by Alison Goodman, and that's another young adult fantasy, and it's got dragons in it, which sounds really cool. And I also have those I didn't mention earlier. They're personalised to me because I met her at a convention a couple of years ago, so that's a little bit of TBR shame right there. But yes, that is my update for now. I am sick, so sorry for my voice, but I wanted to come on and update about Unwind because I feel like that was a fairly big update, the fact that I DNF'd it. And it feels pretty therapeutic to not be reading it anymore. Why hello, it's 4:45 on Tuesday, and I've actually been gone for a little while because I ended up getting sick, but I'm getting back to normal now and I can actually focus on a page and read it, which is great. Because I haven't been able to read, I have only got to about 44 pages of Half a King, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I was kind of in bed with a fever, so it can't really be helped. I also was trying to listen to a little bit more of Dark Age, but like I said, I have just been resting, so I haven't listened to much more of that. I'm about 66% through that one. But I just got home and I actually have some mail, and I think I'm going to do a separate unboxing for one of the things that I received, but I received two things, so I'm just going to jump in and show you what I got. So first off, I got this giant bag and box. And I think I know what the box is, but I'm not sure what the bag is for. I know it's got something joined onto the box, but I don't know what that actually is. So I'm just going to pull it out and show you what it is so you can share the experience with me. I think I know what this is. I might have seen this on Instagram. Yes, this is my Dark Age Fake Rate Hangover recovery box. And this item came with the Dark Age box. So I feel like it's something to do with the suits of armor that they use. So I'm going to open this, but I'm not going to open the box yet. The box is actually really heavy, so I think the book is going to be really chunky. Feels nice and smooth. Looks like it's a blanket. It's kind of like a Snuggie, but the armor. And it's got the howlers on it. Okay, hold on. This is so cool. It's like, it's a bit thinner than I'd like it to be. And I don't own a Snuggie because I don't like that there's no back on it. But it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool item to get in a subscription box, to be honest. I'm not really mad about this. I also got this little package from Waterstones, and I'm pretty sure I know what this is too, because I pre-ordered a bunch of these books and they finally started coming in. Let's see if this pull tab works. Hey, you can see what it is. This is one of the hardcovers of Dark Dawn that I pre-ordered. It is from Waterstones and it has the black stained edges, so this is going to go right into my collection. I don't know how I'm going to fit it onto my shelf because that shelf is full and I have more editions of Dark Dawn coming. So this is a bit of a conundrum, but we're just going to ignore the problem for now. And this edition is signed by Jay, of course. So that is it for my updates for now. I haven't obviously done very much reading. I did go to Melbourne Writers Festival and it was amazing. I loved the festival this year. I also saw the movie It, the second part, so the most recent one that's come out. And I've read the book as well as have recently seen the movie. But overall, I really did enjoy the movie. I liked it a lot, even though it was different from the book. I think it was different in good ways and bad ways. In one sense, they changed something about a character that I really thought added to the story, which was really cool. But they left some key things out of the story that were in the book, and I think that would have added to the tension of the film. I like the film overall anyway. It was kind of a mishmash of supernatural sci-fi horror rather than just a straight up horror thriller film, and I think the first book did the horror thriller part better, or the first film, sorry, did the horror thriller part better, but I liked it. I would see it again. I did enjoy it, and I really, really like the acting, and the casting in that film I think was incredible. So did like it, would recommend. The first part of it is fairly graphic when it comes to cutting their hands, so a little bit of a worry about that. And there's also a very violent beating at the beginning of the film as well on two characters that are gay. So those were hard scenes for me to watch, but after the film progressed past them, it was fine. As for reading, obviously I'm still reading Half a King, still listening to Dark Age, but after I finish Dark Age, I've actually got The Waking Fire, and I have that with me as well as a physical book, but I've also got it as an audiobook. So I don't know if I'm going to start it as an audiobook instead. I'm hoping to, because obviously this book is pretty big and it would be nice to read this while I'm reading other stuff physically, so I can kind of fit it in around other things that I'm reading. But I am aware that Contemporary-thon is coming up. I've only got this week to go before it starts and my mini self-imposed readathon is finished, so I don't think I'll get through something as chunky as this. And I also have Iona as well, and so I'm thinking of doing like a little mini version of Try a Chapter, like my Try a Chapter tag, because that worked fairly well with figuring out what I wanted to prioritize when I did one recently. So I might do that, so I've got a little bit of reflection and a little bit of thoughts about these two books rather than leaving them cold in this reading vlog. So yes, that's really all I have to report. Doing okay, feeling better. The cold got me, but I'm getting better and I can read again, which I'm really looking forward to. So just in time for the end of this readathon and the start of Contemporary-a-thon. So excited. Hello, it's September 11th at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I don't think I'm going to get through two of the books that I put onto this TBR, unfortunately, because Contemporary-a-thon is coming up and it's already Wednesday. So I thought I'd do a Try a Chapter tag, which I mentioned in my last clip. So I'm going to be trying the first chapters of two of my reads for this little mini reading vlog that I've made up, and then giving my thoughts on them. That way I don't leave this reading vlog and leave them cold without any discussion or thoughts whatsoever. So I thought I'd dip into them briefly so I can see what I might think of them. The first one that I'm going to be dipping into is Iona by Alison Goodman, and this one in the first sentence says, Eon is training to become a Dragonite, a powerful lord able to master wind and water to protect the land. So it already sounds really cool. It sounds like Avatar: The Last Airbender mixed with dragons, which is definitely up my alley. So I'm going to read the first chapter, or the first pages up to the page break, or whatever format this is written in, and report back. And like I said, this one is signed to me, so I am embarrassed that I haven't read it yet. So the whole chapter is 20 pages long, but I've read 6 pages because I don't have time to read all of those. But in the 6 pages that I read, it appears that the main character is having period cramps, which is something that I don't see in a fantasy book very often. And Eon wants to become a Dragonite, and I didn't really know what that meant. But in the first couple of pages there's a sword fight and she's in training. I think she's a she, but the swordmaster also called her boy. The back actually says, Eon is in fact Iona, a young woman who has endured years of disguise as a boy for the chance to practice the Dragonite's art. So there you go. We have Eon here trying to become a swordmaster and master the art of the Dragonite, and that is actually to see the spirits of dragons as they're fighting. It dipped into it a little bit at the beginning, but it just seemed really cool and really full of lore that we can explore as the book unfolds, and I actually really like the tone of this, and I think this could definitely be a book that I end up really enjoying. So I have been silly to put this off because it sounds really, really cool. At the beginning of the book there is kind of like a test that they're preparing for, so I'm assuming something goes down at that test and that propels us into like the inciting action or the beginning of this plot. So obviously I haven't reached the pinnacle of the beginning of the book yet. I'm just reading the setting up parts, but from what I've seen so far of the 6 pages that I've read, I like the dialogue, I like the characterization, I like the world, I like the writing style. This is going to be one that I really like, and I'm probably going to give it a 4 stars, I reckon. That's going to be my prediction. Next up, I'm reading this chunky boy. So I'm reading the first chapter of The Waking Fire, or the first couple of pages of it, to see what I think. Because like I've said before, I loved Bloodsong but didn't like Tower Lord, and that is the book that I ended up DNFing in that trilogy. But Anthony Ryan wrote this series after Bloodsong, and they're both not related, they're different series altogether, but because he's written this later, I think his writing would be more developed as well. So I'm looking forward to jumping in and seeing what this one is all about, because again, to continue the theme, there are drakes in this which are like dragons, and I think they hunt them in this book, but I'm not totally sure on that. That's just what I've heard, so I don't know if it's actually true. So let me read the first chapter or a few pages and I'll get back to you. Okay, so there's a prologue in this that goes for about 7 pages, and then there's chapter 1. So I might just read the prologue, and if that doesn't seem to glean much information, I'll start reading chapter 1, which is got a character header on it. So I'm not sure how this is going to be set up. Already this book is interesting me because it's detailing an account of capturing a big drake, which is again like a dragon. These people have hunted it, and then this is a report in the prologue. I don't know who is speaking, but they're basically saying that the syndicate are the people that like harvesting parts of drakes. And then it looks like there's a day called the Blood Lot, which seems to be linked to the distribution or the selling, or maybe it's a black market, of the parts of the drakes in order to make people heal. So that seems pretty intriguing to me. There seems to be a whole system dedicated to hunting these creatures, and I wonder if these creatures are what we think they are. Because in this report it's saying that the drake was quite smart. In the cage that it was kept in when they were trying to harvest it, it tried to crush people against the side of the cage when they came in. And that seems to be a clever thing for a beast to do, to be honest. I'm only 3 pages in, I'll keep reading. So it looks like the blood of the drakes, some people it treats as a toxin and they have a negative reaction to it, but the character who is giving the report here seems to be resistant to the blood's effects, which is a really cool nuance that I like. The character that is giving this report also mentioned an academy and students, so if this has like a magical academy of hunters that are formed to fight drakes or whatever this story is setting up, I am keen. This seems like a book that is really going to be up my alley. This character has mentioned drawing on green and now on red, both with capital letters. That was a weird noise for my throat to make. The character has drawn on green and red with capital letters in the book, so it makes me think that that's a kind of magic system that we're going to see explored. Ugh. And it looks like he ingested some of the drake, which sounds gross. I'm definitely hooked. This sounds like a book that I'm going to really enjoy. At the beginning of the book, they've captured this drake. They're trying to sell it or sell parts of it or display it in some kind of form at a market. But then someone who seems to be blood blessed, like the character who's giving this report, has actually helped free it. And then obviously it's wreaked havoc because it's a scared beast and people have died. So that is how it has begun. Then they tracked the drake down and this guy used his magic, his red and his green, and an ally who had a rifle to kill the creature. That's just the prologue, and I think it sets up the magic system, the fact that there's a political agenda going on behind the scenes with the syndicate and how they're using the drake's blood to enhance their magic, maybe, because the character said he ingested it. But then after the prologue it goes straight into Lizanne, which is a character in the book, so I'm assuming it goes into some character perspectives after the prologue has finished. So I have this one on audiobook as well as obviously physically, so I'm hoping to finish Dark Age so that I can read this very soon, because I was keen to put this off and not really start it. I didn't really have, ironically, a fire in my belly to continue reading it, but now that I've read the first chapter I'm actually really interested, and I think this would be something that I really end up liking quite a lot. Probably more than Bloodsong, which is surprising, but it is early days. I did say that about Half a King, and Joe Abercrombie has this way of writing the beginning of a chapter or the first chapter or the start of a book and really like grabbing you and pulling you in, and that is definitely what he did with Half a King. But now that I'm in it and I'm invested, it's kind of, you know, settled a little bit. I'm not as interested in what's happening, even though I do find it intriguing in general. So I hope that's not the same for The Waking Fire and Anthony Ryan's writing, because he did hook me with Bloodsong, so we will see. I really want to be able to read these, both The Waking Fire and Iona, because obviously they've been on my TBR for ages and I want to finish them, but apart from that, they both seem like they'd be really amazing things that I would enjoy quite a lot. So yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this, with the rest of this clip. I just wanted to actually have some thoughts on these books because I mentioned them in my TBR at the beginning of this video, so it seemed to be a disservice not to talk about them at all. So now I have talked about them and I want to talk about them more, so that is a good sign. But yeah, that's all I have to say at the moment. Hello, it's Monday and I am pleased to report that I ended up finishing Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. That is the end of my self-imposed readathon, so I'm really proud that I finished it because that means I can jump into Contemporary-athon today, which I'm really excited about, and I already have my TBR prepared, so I'm filming a vlog for it, so keep an eye out for that. But for this book I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, which is disappointing because I thought I would be giving it a better rating than that. The first chapter was at least a 5-star hook and the rest of it didn't really meet that first chapter. Joe Abercrombie did this in one of his adult books, so when I started The Blade itself I was really hooked on the first chapter or two with Logan, and then it kind of settled after that. But because it was an adult book and it had a lot more room to describe character and world building and tension in it, as opposed to a young adult book, which I feel is a more simplified version, I ended up liking his adult series a lot more. So I'm going to definitely continue on with his adult books, but when it comes to his young adult books, I think I'm just going to finish up with this one and not continue on from here. So that means that I'm going to sadly unhaul the next 2 books in this series, but it means 2 less books on my reading pile, which I'm pretty happy about regardless. And then just to wrap up the rest of the books that I read or addressed in this vlog, I got 46 pages into Unwind and I ended up DNFing this one, unfortunately. Like I said earlier, I struggled with the writing style and it wasn't really for me, so I gave it a shot, and it's been on my TBR for like 4 years, so I can finally get rid of this one and the rest of the series. So that's a 4-book series off my to be read pile, so that is a little bit rejuvenating and freeing, so I'm happy that I tried this one at least. I don't want to write off all of Neal Shusterman's work, because I know that he's written a couple of different YA books, like The Dry he wrote with his son, and then he's also got Scythe, which is a really interesting premise. It's about a utopia where people don't die, so scythes are like assassins and they have to kill people off to control the population effectively. So that sounds like something that I'd be really interested in, but it's not something that I've got and that I own and that I want to read at the moment. So in the future, I'm probably going to revisit Neal Shusterman as an author, but for now, I'm just going to unhaul Unwind, unfortunately. I also finished Monuments by Will Kostakis, and this is a local author. He is Australian and he's based in Sydney. This is I want to say it's a fantasy book, but it's more like an urban fantasy book. So it's set in Sydney, and this guy Connor has accidentally stumbled onto these monuments who are actually gods. And so it follows Connor and a few characters that he runs into, and these new godly powers and the hounds which are hunting the gods. So if I talk more about the premise, I'll give certain plot elements away, which I don't want to do, but I liked this one. If you're a contemporary reader and you want to have a little bit more of a fantasy element to the books that you're reading, pick up this because it's got a bit of a different flavour and it's a good gateway into reading urban fantasy and fantasy. But because I'm such an avid fantasy reader, I just enjoyed it. It wasn't like the next thing that I ended up loving, but I did like this book, and I will probably continue because this is the first in a series as far as I'm aware, and I like supporting local authors, so I'll probably pick the rest of this series up when it eventually comes out. But this was a 3.5 stars and I liked it. And then the next one I don't actually have with me. It is The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan, and given my history with Bloodsong and DNFing that series, I was a bit apprehensive going into this fantasy book. But like I said in my kind of try a chapter-esque vlog for it, I actually really like the premise of it, and I like the way it's written, and I think I'm going to like the characters because I haven't read from the characters yet, or the character, I don't know if it's multiple perspective or not. I've only read the prologue of the book, so from what I've read, I like the world building, I like the potential magic system it's setting up, I like the writing style, and I like the pace of it. It wasn't too long and dreary, it kept me interested, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. I don't know if it was in my priority reads video or not, but regardless, I want to try and get to it this year, but we'll see how I go. I don't have much time left this year, so that might be a little bit ambitious because it's such a big book, and I do have the second one as well, so I'm looking at that as like a collective series that I want to read and finish, and that's a little bit intimidating. So just know that I'm not going to unhaul this one. It's going to be on my TBR either at the end of this year or definitely early next year or in the future. So it's staying on my to be read pile. And then I also have Iona. I have read the first little bit of Eon and I really liked it. Again, I like the writing style. I like the characterization. I love the trope of the girl disguising themselves as a boy, like in Mulan, to get where they want to be and learn a particular sport or learn a particular fighting style or that kind of thing. I love the movie She's the Man with Amanda Bynes in it. So that is a trope that I'm really on board with. So this is the second book. I don't actually have the first book on me, but I kept calling the first book Iona, so I feel like holding this one up now to talk about it at the end of this vlog is fairly fitting. But I will be, like The Waking Fire, keeping Eon and Iona on my TBR because I liked what I've read so far. So those will probably pop up in some of my TBR videos or my reading vlogs or whatever I film in the future because they're not going anywhere. I'm definitely holding on to them. And then last but definitely not least, Dark Age by Pierce Brown. I have 3 hours left of this audiobook and I did a big hustle to try and finish this book before this reading vlog ended and Contemporary-a-thon started, but I just couldn't quite squeeze it in. But there's a part in this at the very end, so I'm in like the last 80-90% of the book. I've only got a little bit left, like I said. At the end of this, there's a few action scenes that I was really gripped by and I'm really loving them, but the rest of the book has unfortunately been a little bit slow for me. So, or not slow, but just not palatable to what I'm expecting and enjoying reading. It's been very political, like I said, it's a different setup to the first trilogy, and there's a lot of characters that I just don't connect with. I think I need to go back and reread the previous books a few times so that I can get them instilled in my head, because it was such a big gap between this book and Iron Gold. It's like a 2-year gap, so I've definitely forgotten minute characters and side characters and names and references. But this one is probably going to end up being a 3.5 stars, or if the action continues to stick, then 3.75. It's not quite a 4 based on my enjoyment factor, but on a written factor, its pace is fine, it's kept me interested, there's different dialogues happening, there's things that are always going on, it's just something that I'm not necessarily invested in. So that's definitely on my reading taste, not on the way it's written, because it's a very well written book. I'm just not enjoying it as much as I want to enjoy it. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but I will be finishing this very soon. I don't know if I'll finish it during my Contemporary-a-thon vlog or wait until after, but we'll see what happens there. So yes, that is the end of my reading vlog. Thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these books, please let me know in the comments. I would love to chat to you, but I will see you in a new video and I'll see you in Contemporary-a-thon. Thank you and goodbye.